The Monday morning meme was, that what sort of baffles me about humanity is how we struggle to do what we know is 100% know is good for us. And I think that is really the most puzzling thing to me. We seem to be fighting ourselves, fighting our own resistance to doing what we know is good. Why do you think we do that? Did you read that meme? Did you think about it at all? Did you kind of laugh at yourself a little bit when you were like, yeah, I can't believe it, What did it provoke in you? Anything? Right? Would you always use the mics, please?
Total agreement.
Total agreement, right? And no answers really either. Like, yeah, I do that. Why? I don't know. It's what we prioritize in life. We grew up and we are conditioned a certain way. That we need to prioritize work and we need to prioritize money and we need to prioritize this and that. And I understand those priorities. But those are not particularly my priorities. My priority is first and foremost always my mind. Why? Because my mind is my world. And I see that very plainly and very clearly. That when my mind is in a good place, my world is a good place. And when my mind is in a difficult place, my world is a difficult place. It is not what's happening in my world that is the problem. It's what's happening in my mind about my world that can become a problem. So then what? Okay, we can see this by now, right? Is there anybody here that can't see this? When I say that your mind is your world, do you know exactly what I'm talking about? Sharon? That's reluctant. Come on. What does that mean?
It means we think what we are. So if, I don't know. I can't think.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but there's a lot of misconceptions. And the problem is that people always come up to me after Satsang with all of these wonderful comments and questions. And I'm like, where were you in Satsang? Don't be shy. I feed off of your questions, okay? When I have to drag the conversation along, it's difficult for me. There are lots of questions. You should be asking lots of questions. Okay, so don't be shy about that. Don't be afraid to talk. That's one of the differences between me and most students. That with my teachers, I used to drive them nuts with questions, because I just wanted to know. I was suffering, and I was like, I don't want this crap, so if you know how, then you tell me right now, Like, Tom, they're like, Tom, okay, just sit down, Tom. I'm like, no, I want, I can have a little bit of that in you. Now, not too much of it, but, Go ahead, say.
I can't think right now because I'm just kind of still in the meditative state.
Yeah.
That's how I get. My mind kind of does go.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you ask me something, unless I'm really present with what I'm thinking, it's not there. Because I do get into that. I do go into a meditative state most of the time. That's just the way I am.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where the clarity is. You understand? That like when you're in that very present, very clear state, is when you typically are most likely to see things clearly as they are. So when I ask you a question, like if you're in a meditative state is a very, very clear, very, very intuitive state. If you're in that state and I'm saying to you, what does it mean?
For me, it just means being present, because I feel most of the time I am present.
Mm-hmm.
And it's odd when you ask that question, because unless I'm in the middle of doing something else or my mind is worried, for me, that would be a worried state, where I would be preoccupied with something else. But most of the time I feel like I'm pretty much present in what I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Present is wonderful. The question that I'm asking is, when I say that, that my mind is my world, like, that's not a small comment. And when I say that, what am I saying? What are you hearing is kind of really more what I'm asking. Because what I'm saying and what I'm intending for you to hear and what you're hearing is very likely something a little different or very different.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
At this
that's
point,
why
'cause
I'm
I'm
asking
not-
you, because I know you're not sure. But you're just not saying that.
Well,
Microphone, please.
It's all through our own kaleidoscope.
Right.
Our filter, our perceptions of reality. Like you say, we could be in the same room but in different worlds.
Yeah.
Sitting next to each other, observing something. So it's all our processing. It's
Right.
all how we take it in, through our own individual lens.
Right.
Our mind is like our lens.
Yeah, our mind is like our lens that we're viewing the world through. And we all don't have the same lens. And it's all not pointed at the same stuff, too.
Some lenses are very smudgy.
Yes. There's lots of mud on those lenses that need to be wiped away. Absolutely. Because there is no problem. The problem is our perceiving. The problem is our mind. You see, you're born into the world, okay? And you're here, and you're fine. And then you begin to learn language and concepts and ideas, and you're born again into a world of concepts and ideas.
The Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
I found out I woke up into a world which was unconscious.
Yeah, I think that Leonardo da Vinci said that.
Oh, something like that.
Yeah. I had awakened to a world that was still fast asleep.
Yeah. I thought that's where you were going.
Right? But that's not exactly where I'm going. I'm saying that you're born, and you're here, and you're very present, and you cry. You know what I mean? When you feel discomfort, and you smile when you're happy, but you're in the moment. And you're constantly in the moment, and you don't know language. So there's none of this thinking stuff going on for you in that sense. There's no language to think in. Yeah, you guys got to use the microphone for me, okay? I got two. I thought that was Muppet.
Sounds like you're in the feeling stage when you're at that stage.
What exactly do you mean by the feeling stage?
Well, if you have no language, if you're born,
Mm.
you were talking, I'm assuming, like birth,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a language.
Mm-hmm.
Or your crying is language, your comfort, how you feel. If you
Yeah.
feel hungry, if you feel tired, if you feel wet,
Yeah.
so it's your feeling. So I'm interested to see where you take the world as your mind, because I think it's more than that.
Well, it's in a the first thing that we have to see clearly okay, is that we are living in a conceptual world in our minds. Okay? This is the first thing that you have to see. Who here lives on Earth? Right. Do you live on Earth? What is Earth? How do you know that you live on Earth? Somebody told you. Somebody told you that this is Earth. Somebody told you that you live in the Milky Way galaxy. Somebody told you who you are. You didn't know who you were. You were still there. Yeah, in fact, you know probably less, right? Well, good. That's probably better than you think it is. But it's true. They told you that you're Antoinette. They told you that you're John. They told you that you have this ethnic background and this religion. They told you that you need to do this and not do that. This is how life is. This is how life isn't. And the world that I'm talking about is this conceptual world that you have built with the help of others in your head. It's very odd. When you really start to see things as they are, it's very odd. Because even who you are believing yourself to be in your own head is not true. How do I know that it's not true? Are you the same person you thought you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Constantly changing. You know, what we are here to do in satsang is to step out of this imaginary world that we've made up in our head. Why would we want to do that?
I think we have to try to get away from labels, like everything has been labeled.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get out of that whole labeling, you're able to be free.
Free of?
Free of the conceptions that we're taught.
Yeah. Free of the concepts. Why? Because what we're suffering is what's going on in our minds. And it's all just imagination. Even who you think you are is an imagination, the who part of it, which is the ego part of it. This is a very, listen, I'm telling you, if you realize this, you're in a very, very tiny, small tenth of a percentage of people that are able to see this. You don't have to go patting yourself on the back or anything like that. But if you are beginning to see this, what's actually happening is you are beginning to end your own suffering. Because that is how we suffer. And it couldn't be more erroneous. It couldn't be more false. This is a very strange thing to see, but this is not a belief that I'm talking about, and please don't ever believe anything that I say. Hold it up to what you're experiencing, and you will see the foolishness of your own mind and your own relationship to your mind. How many times have you said in your life, my mind, my mind, my mind, but never realized that there is a you that has a mind, a my that has a mind? And it's watching the mind going, wow, that thing is crazy. You know, to step out of this conceptual world that you have built in your mind. This is why the great sages are so different to be around. You can feel their presence. And you can feel them being hooked to nothing. Nothing hooks them. Because there's no them to hook.
Not even a Lamborghini?
Not even a Lamborghini. Yeah. So when I say, you know, that your mind is your world, when you're in mind-identified state, your mind is your world. When you step out of that conceptual world, you will realize that that is only a very tiny fraction of what you are. Am I making sense, or are you just going to throw me in the water here? It's you know, this is kind of tough stuff to hear the first time you hear it, because we're very invested in the world that we've created in our heads. And we're very invested in who we are, and this is who I am, and this is how I am, and rah, rah, rah. None of it matters. Well, yeah, you know, like...
I know those words.
Yeah? No one does that to me.
Tom, doesn't the story process, like, I think there's several stories in our life as we're growing up. Some of the, when we're the youngest, the ones that parents put into our head, and then, you know, when we're 10 years old, 15 years old, whatever, guys maybe thinking about sports and things. But then, now it's career time. Now it's time to build a whole career story.
Yeah.
And where do you fit in? Are you an auto mechanic? Do you push a pencil? Do you fly a plane? You got to like try on all these trial stories to see which one sits right with me. And I think that's part of the kind of the career path process, the selection. But you could look at it another way. You know, one guy's story is to be a doctor or whatever, you know. So it seems like to some degree when we choose our occupation, it's on some level it must be a fulfillment of some kind of story. Can you see yourself doing this? Well, does my story match up to that? No, I'm a banker.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we kind of consciously have to select the path career-wise, and that in a way is saying...
Actually, you're usually very unconsciously selecting a path career-wise.
Yeah, right.
You
Yeah,
know,
maybe it selects you.
Like, what are your options? Who's going to let you do that?
Right.
And what's mommy going to say about
But maybe it appeals on some subconscious levels when it's selecting you also, some ways that you fully can't...
You know, there's very interesting comments. You know, when we're choosing from our ego, you know what I mean? I need to be a doctor. I need to be a lawyer. I need to be somebody. You know what I mean? I need to make tons of money. You know? That is all born... You know, not that there's anything wrong with being any one of those things, but that is all born of a story in your mind. You see, there's a difference. Hold up 1 second. There's a difference between choosing from your heart and choosing from your head. Did I do that backwards? Yeah. I did that on purpose. Choosing from your head and choosing from your heart. You know what I mean? That you know, there is an intuitive guidance. You know, and this is what Susan was pointing to, that there is far more to you than you know. But we are in such reverence and such honor and always kissing the ring of, you know, of this ego and this idea-based mind. Do you know how many people that I've sat down and spoke with, and they have said, "No, this is not what I wanted to do with my life when I was a kid. I wanted to be a zookeeper. I wanted to, I wanted to go to Africa. I wanted to, you know what I mean?" And those things that we're calling them were always subordinated to the logical mind, who said, "No, you can't do that."
It's like they substituted one story for another story, which took higher precedence, the logical mind. But the
first one wasn't a story. There's like listen. Being the founder of a Peaceful Mind Center and leaving a director's position in a medical office and starting this in the middle of the woods, okay, makes no sense to anybody. Not even me. But I knew in my heart that this is what I need to do. You know? And there was there was more reasons in my head why I couldn't than reasons why I could. But I can't sit here and tell you this is why I did it. It just in my heart, it was like a gravity pulling me, saying this is not going to be easy, but this is the path for me. You know, and most people don't follow that part of themselves because it's always subordinated by the intellectual mind, by this thought-based, concept-based mind that tells you should or you shouldn't. When I was in college at Rutgers writing, I wrote an essay called "The Box of Shoulds," and how everybody puts themselves in a box of shoulds instead of doing what they want to do. They do what their mind tells them they should do. Or what other people tell them they should do, which is and it was, you know who Steve Wozniak is, right? Woz from Apple, you know. He said, people have it so backwards. We're so convinced that other people have the right answers. He said it's just not true. You have the answers. Even Buddha said something to the effect of, in your heart, you know the answers. You know who you are, and you know what you want. And and the truth is, I'm the same guy that I always was. Only now I don't have a problem with it.
You shouldn't love yourself anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy. Like, there's lots of opinions. Those of us who grew up in Italian families, by the way, there was lots of opinions, and everybody knew what you should do. And so you're sitting there, and you're thinking, man, I don't know. I like doing this, and I like doing that, and and you're like, oh, you can't do. Come on, you.
You?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't. No, you need a secure job. You need to go work for the guy. You need benefits, right? You need all this stuff, right? And it's such garbage. You're just gonna die one day, And what security do you really have anyway? I mean, my God, it's every week in Satsang here, I am trying to just keep chipping away at you being in a mind-based reality that you've made up in your head. I feel so sad for you. Is this completely imaginary? And it's so hard to see because it is your world. Like, you're in it. You can't get away from it. And you don't know how to stop thinking. And you don't know how to go beyond thinking. Like, really beyond thinking. Most people are thinking about not thinking. Most people are thinking about being present. Most people are thinking about meditating. That's not it. And this is the bridge that I need to help you cross till you get to the point where you stop thinking.
Into the stillness.
Not even into the stillness. You are the stillness. Don't go out of it. Remain still. And don't go wandering into the woods of your mind. It's impossible to describe. It's ineffable. I have to sit here and feebly use concepts to describe that which cannot be described in concepts. And so I have to use words and thoughts and concepts to try and help you not think about words and thoughts and concepts. And that's sort of the paradox of life. We always see life come down to these paradoxes. Presence is so beautiful. And again, why is this important? Because we suffer this ignorance. And all you have to do is look briefly out at the world around you, and just people are so struggling with the most fundamental things. It's just incredible how we can suffer every little thing. Standing in line at the meat market for too long, people are flipping out. The mind does that. As I'm sitting here, hold that thought. As I'm sitting here, for some reason I'm having images of what a brain is. You know, and you've seen pictures of the brain, right? And you've seen the neuron and the dendrites, and you know, there's like a nucleus. You know what I mean? And the nerves kind of look like spidery kind of looking things. You know what I'm talking about? You've seen pictures, images of the brain. Yeah. Just a bunch of wires hooked together, and those wires change somehow. Yeah, in a plate of jello. Right? So where the hell are you in that? You know, if we took yours out and we put it in the bowl here and be like, all right, let's point to Tom. Yeah. Like, hey, a couple of boarded up sections to say, do not enter. Yeah. But it's like, think about this. You know, like, we've all seen images of the neurons in the brain, right? And there's billions of them. That's what's interpreting this reality for you. For you, but who are you? Who are the one that is being interpreted for? And so this thing, this gelatinous blob in here, right, gets programmed, gets wired a certain way. And if something does not have to be real in the world to be real in your head. And if it's real in your head, it's real for you. Might not be real for anybody else. House?
It's like you were saying, wired. You have to rewire the pathways, because I was actually watching something about this. Mm-hmm. And it's like a memory reward system in your brain where you're so used to being like stressed out and worrying and stuff that your body fires, you know, your norepinephrine, your stress, your adrenaline, all those hormones get fired, and your body actually gets used to it, and it craves that rush, that, mm-hmm. you know, and when you go and you flip it, it's like, what are you doing? It doesn't want you to, because it's not getting that rush. So it's retraining and rewiring the whole memory reward system, and yes. Let your body not get used to that, you know, that fight or flight. Like, it craves it.
Yep.
It craves it. And it is a sense of rewiring and getting yourself to start feeling the reward of peace, and instead of that stress hormones.
Yes, and that doesn't happen. That, like, everything that you described doesn't just happen. That gets wired into you over a long period of time. Habits.
And it's almost like your body's running your brain.
And it's almost like your
body's asking for more. So your emotions are really a chemical reaction to a thought.
Yeah.
Right? So Your emotions are actually a chemical reaction to your thoughts. So when your body gets used to that and thinks that's homeostasis or what's supposed to happen, when it doesn't happen, it tries to create that thought again, so it gets that same thing back. Mm-hmm. And now the inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah.
And the inmates are running the inmates who are running the asylum, actually.
And we are so much driven by discomfort. You know, this is why people struggle with the Peaceful Mind Center. Because you come here and you're going to be in discomfort. I'm going to be holding your feet to the fire every week. And it's uncomfortable to face yourself. It's uncomfortable to face what's going on. You know? And when you have like addictions and things like that and anxiety and things like that that are wired sort of into you, you know, when you try to break those habits, all the inmates are upset about that. Now, think about a Zen card. Think about why I created a Zen card. That's a list on a business card of all the things that you need to do every day to create the causes and conditions for your mind to be peaceful. Why? Why would I create something like that?
It's bringing to your consciousness. It creates discipline. It creates awareness. It creates a habit and then a pattern, and then it goes back to what you're talking about, the explosions in your brains that are making the connection.
In addition to that, perhaps just more simply said, to rewire your mind.
Well, one of the I've been doing a lot of brain studying lately, and one of the things is so we have an amygdala which looks for danger every 4 minutes. It's our limbic, that whole thing. But when you get into your prefrontal cortex, which is the adult brain, dopamine actually puts you there, which has the power to override the limbic system. So when you're doing something positive, even playing, even getting anything you're doing that's getting a dopamine rush is putting you in a place where you actually can take control of how your reactions are going again.
It's a fascinating piece of equipment.
Best in the world.
Yeah.
Best in the universe. There's nothing like it.
Yes. But to rewire your mind. Consciously. Your mind got wired unconsciously. Your mind got wired unconsciously, and you fell into identification with mind. Your mind got wired unconsciously. I am inviting you and giving you the tools to wire it consciously. You know, the Zen list is not the same for everyone. It's not meant to be the same for everyone. It will be your list. But you have to get up every day and do it. Because whether you realize it or not, you have been getting up every day and wiring your mind since you were this big. No?
You know what you were saying earlier, we were talking about babies crying against babies cooing and what all that stuff. Baby cooing is real cute, but a baby crying is frickin' annoying. So you're going to do everything you can to try to make sure that doesn't happen, right? So we're trained from a real early time to try to avoid what we think is a bad situation. And what you're doing with the Zen list, it's just kind of striking me, is we're starting to reinforce the good things that we do for ourselves instead of trying to avoid the pain.
We're going directly into the pain. You know, when you do your Zen list, you are nose to nose with all of your resistance. How? Have you tried to do a Zen list? They can't do it. There you go. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is like I can't make it any more simple. You know, what I'm good at is taking these complicated teachings and somehow making them simple in a way that you can understand. And I have simplified it so much to the point where I can do this on one side of one business card. This will change your life if you can do this. Nobody can do it. It's hilarious. I think we tried last March, right? We're like, right? It's like, okay, we're all going to do our Zen list for, March, right? By the end of 10 days, everybody was out.
It's like Seinfeld with $100.
Master of your domain, is that? Yeah, that was a little different, but this is it. So here you have this mind that has been being unconsciously wired over decades. And now you're saying to your mind, hey, you can't do that anymore. There's a lot of momentum that mind has. And this is why it takes diligence and devotion and practice to slowly rewire that mind consciously. And it takes great devotion. Somehow for me, we talked before about intuitive path and being on this path. Very, very strange for me. My life has been very, very different than most people. I've lived alone in New Brunswick, New Jersey for 10 years. And I've lived alone in Florida for 15. What's today's date? 13th. Yesterday was my 15th anniversary. March 12th. Oh, did you?
Yeah.
What year?
2000, what are we in now, 2019? So
Oh.
2004.
That's when I moved, 2004, March 12th. Wow.
It was March 4th, I think, was when.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah.
And it was a great move, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, God, you'd have to
Now
drag
I'm
me.
getting a little too cocky.
Yeah, now it's time to go to Stewart, Hobe Sound, Northern Jupiter. But I have lived like almost in like hermitage for 25 years. I didn't realize it, what was happening. I always thought that I would have a girlfriend. I always thought that I would have a family. I thought I would have kids. And it just never it just somehow never happened. And it always seemed like whenever something was going that way, boom, they would just be gone. I can't explain it to you. But it was like, it's been in my life like that door has been nailed, screwed, and glued shut. And I just say, okay. And so, imagine, like being in 25 years. Now, I stopped drinking alcohol 25 years ago. I quit smoking cigarettes 26 years ago. I was never really into drugs or anything like that. But I have not had a drop of alcohol, except for maybe what's in kombucha, for 25 years. I don't drink coffee. I haven't done that in 20 years. Anything that was altering my mind or anything that was remotely addictive, I stopped. And I have been in practice, and I was a personal trainer. I was training a lot. I really looked after myself physically because that was helping my mind. And then once I had the foundation of a strong physical body and the good brain chemistry that came with it, when you're eating right and bodybuilding and having very, very clean diet versus, going down to $2 pitcher night at the nightclub and drinking Jägermeister and, think about what I was doing to and then I'm depressed, right? I can't figure out why I'm depressed. That's what sent me all on this, was that I was suffering, that I was depressed. And I didn't realize how much the things I was putting into my body were affecting that. And I didn't realize how much exercise had such a positive effect. And then I began to find meditation. And then I began to go, whoa, this is very, very cool. I would start to experience these very sublime moments of no thought. And all I knew was that it felt really good. And so I have been rewiring my mind consciously for a very long time. I can't suffer the things that I used to suffer in my 20s. My mind is just not wired that way anymore. I kind of laugh at it. Like, I can't believe these things used to hurt me so much. What a weird thing. Do you have things like that in your life that used to be really upsetting to you and now they're not? At the time they were upsetting, though, seemed pretty real to you, didn't it?
Real.
And now you're like, what the hell is the problem? So strange. It's just how your mind is wired. You know? And that's why, I mean, look, I could be going around and I could be doing retreat, 3-day retreat here, 3-day retreat there. Could probably make tons of money doing that. That's not what works. This is a gradual process that happens slowly and gradually over time. And that's why I'm here every Wednesday, to give you a place to come and grind on it and grind on it and work on it and stay consistent and ask your questions and go home and practice and come back and ask your questions and go home and practice and come back and ask your questions. Put all the tools in your hand. Here's what you need to do. Because when you're wiring your mind, you're not just saying, okay, I'm going to wire my mind. You got to turn around and go back through all that garbage wiring that's there from the last, 30 years. That's a big garage to clean. So this is not for the faint of heart. And this is not for people that don't want to work. I'm not meaning anybody in here, by the way, when I say that. Yeah. No, the ones that don't want to work aren't here right now. This is, I want you to see, what we're doing and why we're doing and how we're doing, so that you're motivated to be doing. Because why we struggle to do what we 100% know is good for us is because we're fighting through that wiring. We're fighting through our resistance. We're fighting through the way that our mind has been conditioned. Because you begin to realize that there is a me and my mind. Now, me, I want to work out, but I just can't get my mind to do it. You ever said that to yourself? I can't get myself to work out? Who is the I and who is the myself? What?
I've been in the parking lot
Y-
and talked to myself. I'm like, like right there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Jim Dunkin' Donuts. Jim Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, your mind makes you believe it's not going to be a good
Hmm.
Or I've been in a state where my mind will convince me that, oh, it's just not going to be a good workout. It's not worth it. Like if it's where, at least if you're just doing something, but I've convinced myself where if it's not going to be like the epic workout, I really don't have it in me. Just go home.
Yep.
Yep. But it's what I've noticed with me lately, the biggest thing for the rewiring is the awareness. Like catching my mind, like, I just saw you try to pull that on me, like making you believe that you feel a certain way. And, it's now I can see it, and then I can turn around and flip.
That is such an important point, is that you can't change what you're not aware of. You understand that? Like, if you're not aware of it, how can you change? I don't know.
Right.
What you are going to be aware of is you're going to be aware of sort of circumstances and situations arising that you don't want to arise, that you don't want to manifest. So you're going to be aware of the results of your conditioning, but you're not going to be aware of the conditioning itself. I always jokingly and lovingly say how I dated the same girl twice in a row. And different name, same girl. And swore I wasn't doing it the second time the whole time. And there I was. And I realized, oh my God, I just did the same thing again. And I never even knew that it was happening. It was craziness. It was absolutely crazy. So, in satsang again, is to help you raise awareness and help you be aware. Satsang is a big mentoring session. Okay? And even when I'm working just with one person, you know, that mentoring is for everyone, and you may get something more than the person that I'm working with. Because you've got to see yourself. I'm like here to put up a big mirror and polish it as clearly as I can and be like, okay, just look. Because if you could see what was going on, you would change it.
Because if you feel a certain way, there's something that's making you feel that way. So it's not like when someone's like, oh, you made me feel that way.
Yeah.
There's something inside of you that's making that feeling arise. So it's like, I know the other day I had that feeling and I did what you said, like look inside and what's causing that feeling so that you could address it, you know, and I felt emotional and I felt a certain feeling and I sat down and I got quiet because I was aware of that feeling and I wanted to know why am I feeling this way? What's causing that feeling? And I was able to get deep down inside and realize what was making me feel that way, and then realize that is falsely made up, or it happened in the past. It's not happening in my present.
Yeah.
So I was able to take that moment to get quiet, to see where it was all arising from, and be able to kind of process it, to rewire and say like, no, that's not true. That's false.
And you were able to stop or at least minimize the suffering that your mind was creating for you, that you were essentially creating for yourself, you could even say.
Oh yeah, the mind started going. It was like, you know, I'm like, okay, I don't want to feel this way. What's causing this? What's doing this? How can I stop, pause, figure where it's coming from? Why is this arising? And put two and two together and realize, oh, that feeling is coming from the past. That's not happening right now. That's why it's arising. And then I was able to take that thought and
more old conditioning. See
let it go.
Yeah. And when you did that, you just changed a couple wires. You know? You just changed a couple wires in your brain. And it's you know, we create the suffering for ourselves. Doesn't that just tick you off? Like, isn't it just so much more fun to blame somebody else?
Yeah, but it gives you an out. It gives you a way out.
What does?
If you're creating my suffering, it stops when you decide to stop. If I'm creating my suffering,
Yeah.
it stops when I decide.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole idea that there's got to be something that I'm doing that's making me feel like this, and you know, you talk about your mind going crazy. To me, that's kind of when my mind doesn't want me to look at something. Right. So if you
Yes.
can use some of these techniques to quiet, you know, and then be able to get quiet enough to look past it, most of the time, like you said, it's just a big fat lie
Yep.
that I've been telling myself maybe for generations.
Yeah.
So.
It's it's very helpful and healthy to always be monitoring your inner state. To really be just noticing when there's a little tension, even on a very subtle level. Not to be obsessing about it, not to be thinking about it. To just be aware that, I feel a little funky. I feel a little... Yeah, you feel the little changes in the barometric pressure. Just they're subtle, right? But you feel them. And so it's like, you know, to really get in the habit of just noticing when there's some tension or tightness, when there's some weirdness, when there's some upset, when there's some contracting, and just and bring consciousness to it. Look, there's no way that anybody sitting in this room or listening to these videos is going to say, I want to create some suffering for myself today. I really want to feel really uncomfortable. It all happens unconsciously, and what we're trying to do is bring our consciousness to it without judgment. To just bring our consciousness to it, to our suffering, to say, okay, you know, I'm clear that the way that my mind is wired and what's happening, that somehow I am creating this state. I am.
So then the only way I'm going to be able to look at my condition without being judgmental is if I can monitor myself from the self. If I do it from my mind, I'm always going to have an opinion of it or something like that. So that place that I need to try to find to be watching everything is the self, right, that we've been talking about.
Well, see, let me just clean up your languaging a little bit, because it's tricky. Because here's the thing: is that you're going to hear this language, and some of you that are around for a long time, you're going to be able to recite these things that I'm sharing with you, but doesn't mean you understand them. Okay? Doesn't mean that you've had a realization of such. Very, very important that, like, there was something that you said in there that stood out to me. Find the self. Okay? When I become the self.
I think I said from.
Okay. But let's just use that example anyway.
Okay.
The self is what you are, and what you have always been, and you have never not been the self. You have always been the one aware of all things outside you and all things inside you. You are the one that is aware. You are the self that is aware. And you have always been that. So, you are not becoming the self. You cannot become that which you already are. You can't find the self, because there's nothing to find. You can't find that which you already are. You just realize that you are and always have been the one that is aware of all things outside you and of all things inside you. When you have an emotion, a feeling, a sensation, you are the one that is aware. When you have a thought, you are the one aware that the thought is there. When you see a tree or a beautiful flower, you are the one that is aware. And that one, that self that is aware, cannot be understood by the mind. You can't make an idea out of it. You can't make a concept out of it. The moment that you do, it's no longer the self. The self is aware of the mind and what the mind is doing. But the mind cannot conceive the self. The mind is a tool that the self uses. And the big problem that we are having is that most people, the self is identified as the thoughts and concepts in the mind, and blindly, ignorantly believing itself to be these thoughts, concepts, and ideas in the mind. So then the mind is in control, and then the mind is driving the bus, and somehow when the mind is driving the bus, it always looks for the nearest cliff to drive off.
Two things. I got unclear about what I wanted to say there, but something that Tom said earlier. Sometimes, like when a thought, I had this happen over the last couple of weeks. Thoughts quickly and acutely brought up certain emotions in a very fast, rapid way, where I was already in the feeling before I could step back and say, "Whoa, this is more severe than you've had in a while, and this is different, and this is a little stronger."
Was that a fear one?
Kind of was fear, and it took me a while to get the separation I needed.
Good.
I felt like old times. Rabbit hole.
Yeah.
How deep am I going to go? It was uncomfortable, and it kind of perplexed me a little bit. and then I went to think about chemical things or sleep things or all kinds of other things because it came on so strong and sudden. And I actually have a couple of medications I have to take every day. One of them is a thyroid medication.
Yep.
And I've been, I don't like taking pills, but I have to.
Yeah.
And sometimes I skip some days, and then I didn't know I had refills. I'd have to see the doctor for a new script.
Right.
So I think some chemical things were actually changing
Yeah.
because
yeah.
it hit me so strong, and it was
Yeah.
the only conclusion I could draw.
Yeah.
That, hey, this is getting a little wacky and loose.
Yeah, beyond.
Yeah. So sure
Yeah.
enough, I got back on the two medications that could be altering. The others are blood pressure and cholesterol. And then things came back into the range.
Yep.
But man, for a while it was real scary. I was saying, see, John, this is how it used to be for you.
Yeah.
All the freaking time.
Wow.
And it kind of brought me to a scary place, but I knew I had to be separated. But it was harder than normal
Yeah.
because of the imbalances.
Yep.
But I had to realize that because I'm
Yeah.
more stable than that. It came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There had to be more to it than just my quick thought to emotion. You know.
Yeah. It's chemistry is very, very, very important.
And what happened is, Tom, I got interested in thoughts that I haven't examined in years.
Yep.
And I went deep with them.
Yeah.
Sorrowful thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's not who I am anymore.
This what he's talking about is like our greatest fear. Fear is something that's really motivating for human beings, and so marketers really know, that how to make you afraid. And you ever see like those ADT commercials and like some guy with a crowbar running through the house, like you need, and it's like, they really try to trigger us, and fear. It's
The other thing I want to add, because it was part of that whole
Go ahead.
process, I let go a lot of my ego
Yeah.
over the last 7, 8, 10 years.
Yeah.
And I realized, I guess when I was having those thoughts and emotions, I stepped back into ego.
Mhm.
John, why aren't you here already? Why aren't you doing this? When did you get off that path? How come
Yeah.
not this? What happened there? Look at you now. How could you were so different than you are now. How could you be satisfied with less than this?
Yeah.
And why aren't you chasing that anymore? Is it?
The ego knows when you're weak, and it comes, I got you now, and it'll grab you and start punching you in the face,
And just when I was chemically down,
Yep.
the ego jumped on the bus.
Yep.
And the old reprimands that I used to use for motivation,
Yep.
that crazy train.
That old conditioning, you know what I mean, is really ground in there, And sometimes if you're having a weak or difficult moment, it can still come back and jump on your back like that. Even after many, many years of practice, you're like, my God, this can still come and bite me.
And a couple of days of that, I would have had a mental health problem.
Right.
I'm telling you, that's how strong it was for
Yeah.
the periods of hours or whatever.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, this is mental health.
Yep.
This is what this is right now.
Yep. Were you hydrated? Were you?
I think pretty much all that was okay. It
Yeah.
was the thyroid medication does a lot
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went on it a couple of years ago, even getting on it, the first 3 weeks were moody, irritable,
Yeah.
all kinds of other things. So, I got to watch that. The blood pressure and the cholesterol, you can,
Right.
your body's not going to notice it. But the other things that control mood and
Yeah.
thought and metabolisms and,
Yeah.
you know,
And it's just such a great example of your mind is your world. You see what I mean? Same guy, same situation, same circumstances. Chemistry's off a little bit. Ego jumps on your back. All of a sudden, it's chaos.
It was like attack of the ego. You're right. Like I was down like a lamb in the forest.
Yep.
Like a vulture comes or whatever the week.
Yeah.
The ego wanted to get right
Yep.
back on and give
Yeah.
you the.
Yep. And that's why, if we don't want to experience things like that, we've got to be really devoted to our practice. Another part of the problem is that we really start to feel better. And we get into our practice and we're like, man, I feel good. And then what happens? Go start doing other stuff. and then we let our practice go by the wayside. And we forget how much real diligence and effort it takes to hold this very complicated, complex machine where we want it. Okay? Your mind is like, now they say enlightenment is seeing things clearly as they are. Okay? Your mind is like a pond on just a calm summer's day. It's like a sheet of glass. Okay? You can look into that pond and see the world around it reflected perfectly as it is. Enlightenment. What happens when you throw one pebble into the middle of the pond? Ripples, distortion through the whole pond. And when that happens, the reflection of the world around it becomes warped and distorted. One pebble. One pebble. One comment from the wrong person, right?
That's kind of like what happened to me was I had a moment of feeling judged.
Mhm.
That judged feeling brought up emotion. The emotion, brought up a mood.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, it's like where I had to see why is that comment of feeling judged make me feel that way. And then that's when I took the time to, the inbred guilt, the inbred, I should have done that, or I could have done something better. I could have, and that pops up, and I was able to just like see where it was coming from, acknowledge it, and then be able to let it all go because it's false. It's not happening in the present, and somebody else's comment
Very good.
shouldn't have,
Yep.
that type of effect. It did, but I
Right.
had to realize why it was to be able to throw it away.
And the why is, like, because your mind is wired that way. You know what I mean? And when you were able to kind of dissect it, which is what you did, first off, you have to realize that there is a me and a mind. Okay? And it's me observing what the mind is doing. All right? The mind is going batshit crazy right now. All right, well, how is that happening? Why is that happening? What can I do to help that mind and calm that mind down? You know what I mean? And you can deconstruct it the way that you did, and you realized that, okay, this is kind of like a core belief I have about myself or the world or something like that, a negative core belief or something. And all of a sudden you felt it kind of fall apart, right? And when it fell apart, the feelings went away, didn't they? And that's what's really important, because we are very different people when we are in pain. And we act weird, and we perceive differently, and we choose differently.
Chemically, you start to feel you feel different. Like
yeah.
the anxiety sets
Yeah.
in, that feeling, and you recognize that, and then you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
this isn't how I want to feel. Something inside me is doing this, and
Yeah.
and it's that whole memory reward. Even though it's not a good feeling, it's like the body's used to that. It's like, yeah, give me more of that uneasy feeling,
Yeah.
and you're like, no, I don't want that uneasy feeling, and then you have to dissect it to figure out.
They call that too, like identifying with being identified with your pain. There are people that are identified with their pain. In other words, they don't know who they are without it, so they keep clinging to it and hold. Huh?
It's a possession. It's there.
No. It's an identity. It's not. It's what they are. So someone like me come try to take their pain away, and they get all mad, and because they don't know what it's like to be without it. They don't know who they are without it. And so they just hold on to it and lament it and suffer. And it's almost like the minute that they start feeling better, their mind comes in and sabotages the whole thing so that they could go back to where it's familiar to them. Although what's familiar to them is completely uncomfortable and upsetting.
The devil you know.
The devil you know. So, that was one of the quickest satsangs I think I've ever taught. I really mean that. It's 8:45 already.
Where did the time go?
There is no time. I don't know. Yeah, but you know what I mean. That was really like when we're present and we're really engaged.
Say the present, it goes.
This is what I'm trying to cultivate here. So don't be shy here. You know what I mean. This is a real opportunity. Did Did you pick up what I was dropping today? You know, it's like, look, like you got to get it. You got to get what's going on, and then you got to do something about it. You know, and you know, what I'm really wanting you to understand is just how important your practice is, and why it's important to be so consistent and so diligent and so devoted to your practice. Because your mind has been wired for many decades to cause lots of problems. The mind is very, very subtle, and it requires great TLC. And if you can consistently be in your practice every day, you will you will realize amazing things, and amazing things will happen in your life. Amazing. Because you will be subduing and training the mind, and you will no longer be slave to the tyranny of your own mind. And it is always your own mind that is causal in your suffering.
Remember that? There was an old comic strip called Pogo.
Vaguely.
One of those things was, "We have met the enemy, and they is us."
So, just the last thing I'll say, and we'll get to our meditation, is that I have great devotion to my practice. And what motivates me in my great devotion to my practice is that I love feeling good and having a fun life, and I know what's causal in that. I know how subtle my mind is. I know how I grew up. I know how my mind is wired. And I know that my mind is something that just takes, how can I say this? Takes a lot of fine tuning. Like a Ferrari. You know what I mean? You're not just going to get a Ferrari and drive it down the road, and, you know, Ferraris are, you know, once a month are in the shop getting tuned up, fine-tuned, looked over, combed over. You know, it's a very complex machine. You know, it's a piece of art. Your mind, your brain is a very complex machine, and it needs to be constantly fine-tuned, looked over, gone over, and taken care of like the pristine, magnificent, magical piece of equipment that it is. Has to be. There's nothing more important. There's nothing more important. And so I hope this satsang encourages you, you know, to really go home tonight, and as you're laying in bed, think about, like, how is my practice? And am I really devoted to my practice? And am I willing to put the effort into it? Because that's, I'm laying it out for you here. You have something that that nobody else has. Very, very unusual to hear these things anywhere. You know? You have somewhere to go where someone is like being like, here, I am just spoon feeding it to you. It's a very unusual thing. And that's not a pat on my back or anything like that. It's just that there just aren't a lot of teachers like this in the world right now. Where have you heard anybody talk like this? Where do you ever have conversations like this? You know? Huh?
You really have to search it.
Yeah. Maybe on YouTube you find some people, which is good. There are other teachers and give you different aspects of sort of the same path that go to the same thing. But, like, look, take advantage of this. You know, like, really take advantage of this and just try on what I'm saying. Grab a Zen card and say to yourself, okay, it's March 13th, right? And I'm going to do a Zen card every day until, you know, April 13th. And just see how I feel. And what's going to happen is, you know, I don't even have to tell you, that you're going to feel better. And your mind is going to be more calm and more peaceful, and you're going to have energy, and you're going to be in a good mood, and everything's going to be working right. And that's what's going to motivate you. I want to feel good. I don't want to suffer this life. I want to have fun. I want to screw around. I want to go play. I want to go be out in the woods with my friends, taking hot showers. And I just want to live like a little kid. Why? Because that's when I had the most fun. I loved life when I was a kid. We would go tearing through the woods, running through the woods, so happy, full of energy. Frolicking, just no sense of time. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I can tell you that planning this camping trip and getting all this stuff ready has made me that excited. I'm so excited. I'm up till like 1 o'clock in the morning, find this, find that, trying to get everything in, trying to, figure out all these problems and do all this stuff. And, I'm going to be out there in the middle of the woods, just at peace. And it's something I'm really, really, really looking forward to so much. And I'm just excited like a little kid about it. And I want to find the things that excite me like that. And those are the things that I want to do in my life. And I'm doing them. Oh, and you're all coming with me, so. It's funny, like when you see kids, they get excited, right? You have a couple young kids, right? They get excited about stuff. As adults, what are you excited about? People really starting to get excited about this camping trip. They're not.
They go away for 3 weeks in North Carolina.
Yeah.
They can't leave. They count down the
Yeah.
days. No phones, no nothing. They're just out in the
Yes.
woods doing kid stuff like they should.
Yep. Yeah, like what's the difference? But that's the thing that people are getting excited. Like Dawn and Todd are not here, and Sherry and Sean, and they're like texting me and calling, like, what are we gonna do here? What are we gonna do this? And how are we gonna do that? And, it's like it's ignited some excitement in people. And that's one of the things I really want our adventure clubs to do, is to get you excited about something. Do you notice that you're not excited about anything anymore?
Harder and harder.
Right? You get older and there's no more excitement. Well, what the hell?
Still getting older is more exciting.
Good for
The
you.
way I live my life.
Yeah.
I live my life every day. What am I going to do that's exciting? I'm always thinking about the next
Yeah.
day.
What excites you? What's exciting for you?
Getting older in my mind stuff.
Yeah.
But if I don't look in the mirror and I just live,
It's awesome. Yeah, I should take all the mirrors out of my house. Why are you so excited, Tom? I took the mirrors out.
Paintings of you as a young man.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's awesome, though. You know what I mean? Like, be excited. Find, something that makes you excited.
I just got my passport. It expired
Aha.
today. I got my passport. I want to go to Europe.
There you go.
I'm homeless, basically. I'm just ready to go all the time.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for my next adventure. That's all I think.
It's awesome.
But I don't have a house to live in. I mean, I have a place to live, but it's not mine.
Right?
But I don't care.
Yeah, what do you need, right? What do you need? Yeah. You're untethered. There's a good book called The Untethered Soul.
I feel better.
Yeah? Wonderful.